Arc the Animated Series has finally dropped, and we've been given access to 6 episodes so far. And today we're going to be doing a review and taking a look at episode number 1. This is definitely going to be chock full of spoilers, but just looking to create a discussion and have some fun now that the series is finally out. I'll be doing this with screenshots here, and we'll be discussing what happens in the moments with those screenshots. Starting off here, we do start off with just this the arc symbol underneath the water, and I think this is really, really great the way they started off, just with these fishes swimming through the coal lens. Probably mispronounced that might happen, but it's very peaceful. And Arc is definitely not peaceful, so I appreciate the fact that they start with something peaceful, and then they immediately roll into this next scene, which was kind of surprising to me, because Helena starts in the ocean, and for anyone who's played Arc, you typically start on the beach, and I would tell you starting in the ocean would be a traumatic experience. There would be significantly more deaths and way more urgency early on. Usually it's you start, you wake up, make sure there's no raptors or dillos, and punch some trees. But this one, she nearly gets swallowed by a megalodon right away. A huge transition from that peaceful moment to this, which I think was great. This scene actually is really, really good. Throughout this whole episode, right, there's very minimal contact with actual wild creatures. So I appreciate the fact that at the very beginning of this episode, they introduced a wild creature and the risk that it poses to Helena's presence here on the island. Now, immediately she finds another wild creature, one that is not so aggressive, a dodo, and apparently her charisma is extremely high because she just immediately tames this guy. He walks up and she's petting him, not having to knock him out or feed him berries. Of course, this is a show, it's not going to be the same, but I think this is really cool, actually. She meets a friend. The dodo looks great as well. I think that's awesome. If you would be able just to walk up and pet some of the creatures that are less hostile. I do think having interactions like this would be really, really cool in the game. Would make for a lot more immersive experience as well. Now, looking at this next one here, we get our wonderful Bob, and this smug smirk I feel like is literally every Bob ever. When you're first on the island and you just find something that you can't resist, chasing that dodo on the beach with a pike, wanting to go exploring, and usually you get this idea and you just commit to it because you have usually nothing to lose because you don't have a lot of stuff on you. You're just starting out and you can kind of do whatever you want. There's not real any risk outside of dying, which you just respawn. This next one here, let's talk about this because this is really interesting. So in the previous shot of this, I didn't have the picture included here, but we see the Mesopithecus, the smaller monkey, and they appeared quite large here in the animated show. Achatina, the snail here, in game, it is massive. Usually you find them there in the swamp areas and they're pretty darn big. I would say they're probably bigger than the monkeys. However, this one is so small and she's able to pick it up with just 2 little fingers. This is then used later on, but she just slips this little guy in her pocket and uses this for something later, and it's really interesting with the size comparison between the TV show and the game. Looking at this next one here was also really interesting because when you tame dodos, you feed them berries, but in this specific clip here, you can see that the dodo is eating bugs, almost as in he would either eat raw meat or chitin in some sense. So I found that kind of was interesting or intriguing, a small little detail. Birds typically are omnivores. They tend to eat a little bit of both meat and vegetables. So the dodo back then, I'm sure anything is possible. I don't know the actual history to dodos or what their diet was. So there's a lot of flashbacks to her life before the island and the arc. I will actually not be going really into those. I'm more just going to be focusing on specifically what takes place on the island because, like I mentioned, I'm not an arc historian in any capacity. So I just want to kind of compare and contrast with what I usually experience in the game itself. Now, this next scene, oh my goodness, I had to pause the movie because, one, I laughed. I'm not going to lie. I laughed when this happened because I just wasn't expecting the gore. I knew something was going to happen, but I was expecting a wild creature, a jump scare, something, not just this brutality of this arrow going through the back of his head and blood flying everywhere. I was completely caught off guard with the amount of gore that is in this TV series. And transparently, I love it. It's awesome. It's something like slasher quality gore, which is kind of crazy. Really not expecting that. So here's the next thing is we run into the raptor. This is the person who killed Bob. And the raptor looks ferocious. The raptor looks amazing. I love this. But I'm a little disappointed that literally 5 minutes in, your first major threat outside of that megalodon is another individual. It's not a wild creature. And I wish they would have focused a little bit more on the survival aspect of it. I do understand that with large tribes, I'm sure this is exactly probably how it feels when an individual lone player joins a large PvP server. You probably just get immediately destroyed. I can't speak to it because I don't play PvP, but I feel like that's pretty much what just happened here. But it would have been cool to kind of see the introduction of survival elements prior to what takes place for the rest of this episode. But who knows? Maybe that'll happen in future episodes. We'll talk about that when we get there. And then this was, again, I laughed at this moment because I was just watching, and the reaction she gives and she gets yanked off the screen, I laughed. I know I'm a terrible person, but at the same time, I was like, wow, this is like a lot of really crazy violence, which was awesome. But and again, not expecting it. I will say though, this here is a lasso, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure the lasso is not in the base game. I want to say it's either a mod or it gets added in Scorched Earth. I honestly don't remember, and if anyone does know, please let me know down in the comments below. And then this next shot here is amazing. This is Rockwell being introduced, and it's just this amazing, menacing villain while everything is burning in the background, and this Triceratops just looks like this really, really evil creature. However, you do see slightly later, he does not look all super menacing when it's from the side, but this shot was an absolutely amazing shot. I think they did really good introducing Rockwell. I thought this next one was pretty cool. They basically actually leaned into a little of realism, talking about the raptor's eyesights and how basically being around bright lights affects them, and she's able to use the shield to defend her. This was the kind of scenario where I was talking about being able to, defend herself against creatures. I think seeing situations like this in the wilderness would be really, really cool. So I really, really enjoyed this little piece here. Here, they end up using the bola. This is the first time we see the bola in the episodes, and they end up using that on her. So it's weird that they use the lasso on the other two, maybe because they were on the raptors, but then they use the bola on her to pin her down before they end up capturing her. And then once you are back in camp, you're talking with Rockwell here, and Rockwell basically tells you he is the one in this series who invented the term or the word, the art. And then looking at the next one here, again, a little bit of disappointment, but also cool. So basically, this is their vision of what a large tribe would look like in Ark on the island. So again, we don't get to see like the base building aspect too much because you immediately get placed here in this large encampment. But yeah, it would have been really cool to kind of see how she grew and kind of begin to start to survive. Again, hopefully we'll see more of that in future episodes. Have not spoiled it. Just watch the first one. I plan to watch each one individually and then do a review prior to jumping into the next one just because I don't trust myself to not foreshadow in the future if I already know that information. All right, now this next one here is basically talking about the next two, actually talking about the way that they go through and tame, in a sense. They are whipping the raptors and corralling them like they would with cattle, and then they basically are feeding them meat and starving them to, I guess, gain their trust or have them do their bidding, which I thought was an interesting take on the way that they do it. It is obviously a lot of brutality here, and this whole thing came about from Rockwell's idea and concept of how these dinosaurs should be handled. Again, you can see this also here with the parasaur. This is the parasaur that you actually see slightly earlier prior to Bob getting killed that they help, and this is their way of trying to tame it and torture it. And then this shot here I know is going to be a meme somewhere, where basically Rockwell just slaps Helena, and because she was basically telling him, that's not how you should be treating these creatures, and he didn't like that. But she gets revenge and causes, a bloody nose here. So Helena 1, Rockwell 0. Great job, Helena. That was really, really great. Looking at the next one here, you can see there's a bunch of captives. So these survivors were not killed. They were taken prisoner instead. So obviously they are picking and choosing, and you can see there, obviously they are the survivors, as they do have the implants on their hands. A moss drop shows up just for a brief moment, which was really, really cool. It looks a lot scarier, if I'm being honest, in the show here. In the game, they look pretty mellow, and if you get in a fight, they run from you. So this guy looks pretty menacing, though, especially since the raptor pounced on him, and he let out a loud yell because he was pretty pissed off about that. On this next one here, so I had to watch this 3 times in a row while I was recording to finally see something. There's a dodo on top, and that's probably the first thing you see is the dodo. Look beneath the dodo and beneath the barrel. There is a creature in there, something wearing a collar and 2 claws over these 2 barrels. I missed that the first 2 times, and I have no idea what that is, and I don't think you ever actually see the first one. I'm assuming it's a raptor, and then the next thing you see raptors running right past these barrels and chasing, but that is so odd and hilarious at the same time. Let me know in the comments if you saw that the first time around or if you saw it whatsoever. This next picture here, basically Helena's getting stopped. The very, very menacing Rex eye we've all come to know and love, similar to the one you see in Jurassic Park when it pulls up to the window. And then, of course, you see the giant Rex here with General Nerva on top. It is a pretty hefty size Rex. You also notice on the front of the Rex, there is this plating that is white with this interesting red symbol on it. I don't know what that symbol represents. It could be something from Ark. that is already in the game, or could not be. I honestly don't know. Maybe that's their tribal mark. That's very possible. You can also see, though, the Rex is pretty darn beat up. He's got a lot of scars. I'm not sure if that's from the conditioning or if that is just from the countless battles that they've had in it, because obviously they use these creatures for war and for pillaging. So, but this Rex has obviously been through a lot with this general. The general ends up saving Helena, though. He just tells him, don't eat her. It's not worth it. I really, really like his outfit as well. So I hope in these future Tuesdays and Thursdays, when they end up dropping that additional content, this is definitely a costume that we get access to, because this looks great. When I think of like surviving, this would be really, really cool. This next one here, she actually speaks his language, saying, that he is from Rome, please halt. So she's trying to build a relationship to save herself, because she realizes she was thrust into this world and this extremely hostile and dangerous place. Well, she manages to save herself, so that's really, really good. This next one here as well, you can see that she meets up with the boy who was originally from the village, who she helped save from the raptor, and he happens to also be here, so he did get captured, unfortunately, as well, because she tried to escape and she ended up smashing Rockwell's face in, causing that bloody nose. They basically sacrificed this guy to the T-Rex, and at one point I thought maybe something was going to come out or someone was going to come help her. Yet, no, look, he gets trapped, and you can literally see this look of fear and despair in his eyes as he realizes he's going to die. And again, this leads back to the whole brutality of the show, not realizing it would be like this, but again, awesome, really being representative of the savageness of dinosaurs and the creatures. And you could see him just like tossing this boy around all bloody and playing with his food. And I thought this again was hilarious and totally going to be a meme moment in the future, I am sure. And then here, she finally says his name, General Nerva, does Jupiter smile upon you? Again, trying to create some sort of dialect and relationship, which I think is important because there's something we're going to discuss a little bit farther along in this next scene as well. Basically, she's trying to build this trust and rapport. He starts to trust her, and he shares this really, really deep secret with her, that there's this insane treasure called an artifact, which obviously we all know from the game. The artifacts are what's used to summon the bosses and then eventually ascend. And what he wants to do with these artifacts is he wants to use them to gain knowledge and power, which he certainly could and would do, obviously through a different measure of challenges. On the island, obviously you'd have those bosses. Not sure what that's going to look like in the show, but again, he trusts her enough to share this information with her, and he explains to her that you need 3 of them. So I'm not sure, again, there's only 3 of them he mentions. Obviously on the island there is 10, so if he is referring to just 3 just for the one obelisk, perhaps he has not explored the rest of the island yet, or perhaps they're not going to go in that far in depth. I'm assuming, though, this is referring to the broodmother. That would be my assumption, since that is the first boss you would typically encounter on the island. For some reason, she betrays his trust. She's trying to build his trust. She gets the artifact, but then she takes that same Achatina we talked about earlier in her pocket, and she rubs it along the cup. Apparently the Achatina paste, she says, is actually toxic in a sense. She told him that this Achatina here is actually going to paralyze him for the next couple of hours, which again is really, really interesting because it's smaller than it is in the game, and the paste itself has completely different properties because in the game, it's actually used as a substitution for cementing paste, whereas obviously here they're saying it's actually a toxic substance. So another small but different detail. Again, love comparing and contrasting just to see, where things go. Taking a look at this next scene here, you could see that she's using the meat that she grabbed in the bag to basically lay around to basically distract and attract the raptors to help her aid her escape. And then looking at the next scene here, you could see that obviously she gets caught once again by Rockwell the second time now. So you could say that's 1-1 for the 2 of them. But she does manage to get out here thanks to her using that meat. Get those raptors to come out. They attack the guards and then set her free. Again, clever thinking on her part to use other creatures against them. The parasaur that she originally saved in the forest that was then captured and being tortured actually saves her. I wish every parasaur that I've ever tamed was this helpful. Also seeing these next few clips, that same parasaur then headbutts down this giant gate to let out all of the enslaved other survivors. So again, very, very helpful parasaur. Again, though, I've never had a parasaur this useful, but great job on them for doing that. And then she does find her dodo friend, who she's going to take with, the one who she found in the beginning, who was also hanging out with that raptor atop the barrels. And then you can see here the raptors actually go to attack General Nerva, and he basically just shows off here, almost just showing off his experience as a Roman general. And you can see he literally just slashes through them with his blades. 2 hits and this raptor's dead, and this next one he stabs them in his head, and it's literally just this gushing of blood. Again, the brutality on this show is awesome. I can't wait to see where this goes. But then this next one takes a drastic turn, General Nerva throws a spear and it actually goes through Helena's shoulder. You can see the blood going to come out here in just a minute, but that was obviously very impactful. You could see she immediately teared up from the pain that it caused. And you could see here so much pain that once she got to safety here, that she collapsed on the ground. And then you could see her pulling it out of here, just this amount of blood that gushes out when she does it. It definitely wasn't a lethal one, since you could see it was through the shoulder, but that would be immensely painful. I am sure of it. So that, that's kind of a crazy way to start off the show as well as end the first episode. Which you can see here, we have this beautiful picturesque scene. Basically, her real first, I think, exposure to the wilderness on the Ark without there being any people, since Bob is dead and she's now escaped the encampment. So I'm hoping in episode 2 we will get to see a lot more with wild creatures and not having her just be chased by this encampment for a long period of time. But I do not know yet. I will certainly know here soon, and when I do, we will go through and discuss and have a review on that episode. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below what your thoughts and discussion are on the few things that we discussed, and subscribe to see more.